Moving in with my fiancé Kyle wasn't exactly part of my life plan. But when your family goes bankrupt, your parents sell the mansion, and you're left clinging to a job in the city, desperate times call for desperate measures. Like sharing an apartment with the guy you used to torment on the playground. The twist. Kyle's no longer the scrawny kid I used to chase. He's a polished, stoic adult with a penthouse that screams rich and emotionally unavailable. Me. I'm just here for the free rent. Or so I thought. The door to Kyle's apartment swung open, revealing him standing there like a perfectly tailored mannequin. His shirt was crisp, his pants had no wrinkles, and his face was the same stoic mask he'd been wearing since high school. Meanwhile, I was hauling my entire life in a suitcase that was one well short of functional. And, he said in that flat, no-nonsense tone of his. Kyle, I replied with a matching deadpan, dragging my suitcase over the threshold. Nice place. You redecorated since I last terrorized you? Hardly, he muttered. I tossed my bag near the couch, flopped down on it, and stretched like I owned the place. So where's my room? Kyle blinked. Your room. Yeah. You know, for walls, a door, maybe a bed. He crossed his arms, looking far too smug for someone whose childhood trauma was currently lounging on his designer furniture. Our room is down the hall. Our? I shot upright, staring at him like he'd grown a second head. We're engaged, he said as if that explained everything. Yeah, because our parents made us. Kyle shrugged. Still counts. Oh, he was enjoying this. I could see it in the slight upward twitch of his mouth. Revenge for every time I'd tripped him on the playground or stolen his pudding cup. Well played, Kyle. Well played. Kyle and I weren't strangers. We were practically raised in each other's backyards. Our families, both wildly successful and disgustingly wealthy, had been friends for decades. Think charity galas, summer estates, and awkward family dinners where I'd inevitably get in trouble for pelting Kyle with hors d'oeuvres. But then my family hit hard times. Bankruptcy struck like a bad soap opera plot twist, and my parents sold our mansion, packed their bags, and moved to a quieter, more affordable city. I stayed behind for one reason. My job. Two reasons if you counted the sheer inconvenience of uprooting my entire life. But finding an affordable place to live in this city was like searching for a needle in a diamond-encrusted haystack. Enter Kyle and his ridiculously spacious, ultra-modern apartment. With more than enough rooms and an obligation to play the perfect fiancé, he was my only viable option. The first night was a roller coaster of emotions. Mostly mine. I discovered Kyle had an entire manual of house rules. No shoes indoors. No food in the bedroom. And for the love of all that's holy, the throw pillows on the couch were not to be touched. Naturally, I stacked them all into a fort and ate chips inside it. Kyle walked in, froze, and stared at me like I was a crime scene. What are you doing? He asked, his voice a perfect mix of exasperation and disbelief. Living my best life, I said, popping another chip into my mouth. To his credit, he didn't lose it. He just sighed, muttered something about this is my life now, and went back to his color-coded fridge. A week into cohabitation, I realized something unsettling. Kyle wasn't as cold as I thought. Oh sure, he was still Kyle with his perfectly creased shirts and his inability to leave a single dish in the sink. But sometimes I'd catch him doing nice things. Like the time he replaced my favorite snack stash without me asking. Or when he lent me his umbrella without the usual lecture about responsibility. The worst was when I woke up to find him cooking breakfast like some kind of domestic god. What's this? I asked, pointing at the plate of pancakes. It's food, he said, deadpan as always. Yeah, but you made it. For me. Why? Kyle glanced at me, then back at the pancakes. You live here. You need to eat. Suspicious. One evening I decided to test my theory. If Kyle was really happy about me living here, he wouldn't lose his mind if I crossed a line. So I did the unthinkable. I touched the thermostat. Kyle materialized out of nowhere like a demon summoned by chaos. What are you doing? It's freezing in here. I argued, pointing at the thermostat. Kyle sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. It's set to the optimal temperature. For who? Penguins. He stared at me, then reached over and cranked it up. Victory. Or so I thought. The next day I found my favorite blanket mysteriously missing. Kyle claimed ignorance, but the smirk he failed to hide gave him away. Despite the banter, the pranks, and the occasional passive-aggressive battles, I started to notice something nice about living with Kyle. He laughed more than I expected. Smiled more too, though he tried to hide it. And when I had a bad day, he didn't mock me like I thought he would. Instead, he handed me a bowl of ice cream and let me vent. "You're not so bad," I admitted one night as we watched a movie. "Don't let it go to your head," Kyle replied, but his voice was softer than usual. And then, as if to ruin the moment, he added, "You still owe me a new set of throw pillows." Several months into living with Kyle, something started to change. Something that didn't involve me hoarding all his throw pillows. It was subtle at first. A lingering smile after I pulled off one of my ridiculous jokes. The way he'd soften his tone when we talked about the future. It was like we were both dancing around the elephant in the room. The fact that we were more than just fiancé and childhood tormentor. I was sitting on the couch one night, scrolling through my phone, when Kyle came in holding a small box. His usual serious expression was gone, replaced by something nervous. "What's this?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. He held the box out to me, looking like he was about to give a speech. "So, I've been thinking. We've been living together for a while now, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't mind it." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He rolled his eyes, clearly embarrassed by his lack of finesse. "I don't mind having you around. Actually, I kind of like it. More than I expected." I looked at the box, then at him. "So, you're telling me I'm not just your forced fiancé anymore?" Kyle shook his head. "No. I think I'd actually like to marry you. The real way." My heart skipped a beat. Was this really happening? Was Kyle the guy who once threw his lunch at me because I'd accidentally made him cry in 3rd grade, saying he wanted to marry me for real? Well, I said with a smirk. Looks like someone finally grew up. Kyle gave me a playful shove. "I'm serious, Anne." I opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing too fancy, just something that looked like it had meaning. And somehow that was perfect. I laughed because it was either laugh or cry. "I can't believe you're finally asking me this after all these years." He shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "Better late than never, right?" I paused for a moment and said, "You know my family went bankrupt, so they cannot help your family's business anymore, and your family may want to arrange a better marriage for you." Kyle replied in a serious voice, "My parents watched us growing up together. They loved you not just because of your family's company. And more importantly, this is my decision." I stood up and pulled him into a hug, the ring still in my hand. "I'll take it, Kyle. But only if you promise to stop trying to control the thermostat." Kyle chuckled, his arms around me tightening. "Deal. But only if you stop eating chips on the couch." "Fine," I said, pulling back and tapping him on the chest. But no more optimal temperatures in my house. A few months later, Kyle and I found ourselves at the altar, exchanging vows in front of our families, who looked just as shocked as I was that this was happening. I couldn't stop smiling. Maybe it was because we'd gone from childhood enemies to partners in crime. Or maybe it was because I could finally say I liked the guy who used to be the butt of all my pranks. Happy endings don't always come the way we expect them to. Sometimes they come with a few years of childhood drama, a few well-placed pranks, and a couple of slightly awkward proposals. But when they do come, they're worth the wait. And as for Kyle, well, let's just say the thermostat wars have officially ended. Mostly.